So I recently finished up Fate Zero, which actually was mind-blowing. I think it may very well have become my favorite anime that I've watched so far. Hey, my name is Marco. I'm a former professional opera singer, and I love talking about anime music and video game music after a decade on the stage. In this particular case, we look at music from an emotional perspective, and I'm very excited because finally I'm going to be talking about the second opening of Fate Zero, which was actually my preferred and my favorite of the two, To the Beginning. First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the music, then we're going to dive into the lyrics and what everything means, but let's get to it. It's an interesting start, you know. So I think in that beginning sound, what we end up getting is the feeling of love and the feeling of the sun rising and conviction and honor, committing to a decision, especially with the vocals, the upper bright vocals. That also kind of sends home this idea of like a monumental change or something shifting in the way of the world. Especially the sustained beat, and then we kick in with the action. Now, of course, in this opening, we do have that kind of panoramic shot as we pull up and we see Saber. And I really think that in some ways, this is the overall vibes of Fate Zero rather than like an individual like character motivation. But you could also say that that sound is actually, you know, is Saber. It is Saber coming to terms, awakening and realizing what this world is like. And I mean, God, that ending, I love Fate Zero. But obviously the drums kicking in is momentum and energy, right? And I actually love that too. Pardon me for stopping so much, but it's important that I, you know, kind of take breaks to point things out as I hear them. But here, so what we get there is this sharp rhythmic intensity, which I think is really, again, inviting conflict. But, you know, one of the most fascinating things to me about this particular series, Fate in general, but Fate Zero, is for the most part, not everybody, of course, and when we think of Caster or certainly Berserker, but when we think of the Knights, we think of the meeting of Saber with Archer and Ryder when they're all gathered. Now, obviously, Archer is not exactly, you know, the most generous person, but even in the moment where Ryder and Archer are having that conflict, there's a sense of honor and respect and a trial of heroes. You also see it with Lancer and Saber, where there's mutual respect. And I actually think that violin motif is that hero of heroes meeting and joining forces, or at the very least showing mutual respect and even some degree of adoration, even though in the case of the Holy Grail War, they are mortal enemies. And I find that really interesting here. So it's interesting because that whole verse is really, really, really pronounced and very declaimed, and everything kind of feels like it ends on a period except for the mitari. That part feels like it ends on a question, but you know, so you know, I'm sure only one more time a miracle will occur, and the twisted future you draw out with your kind voice. For the sake of making a world where no one cries, I scream out a prayer that doesn't reach anywhere and disappears into the contaminated red sky, throwing away all mercy. There's this kind of double feeling of hope mixed in with the bleakness of the reality. In the twisted future you draw out with your kind voice, almost as if the twisted future comes from someone who has a kind voice, I'm sure with only one more time a miracle will occur in the twisted future you draw out with your kind voice. Or, despite the fact that this is a twisted future, a miracle will occur with your kind voice. For the sake of making a world where no one cries, which is very much Kitsurigo's like entire journey. Also odd too to think that Kitsurigo ended up being like the main character and certainly like the focal point. For the sake of making a world where no one cries, I scream out a prayer that doesn't reach anywhere and disappears into the contaminated red sky, throwing away all mercy. And it's interesting how musically weirdly though, this little corner, let's just listen to this again. Listen to how it's changed. You kind of hear desperation in that, right? And then that's funny. Dame no okanami sekai no tameni. That part is really like, for the sake of making a world where no one cries. For the sake of making a world where no one cries. And then we get into... Right there, yeah. Do you hear how there's a slight twinge of like, damn it, I scream out a prayer that doesn't reach anywhere and disappears, right? It's kind of interesting. It's just so powerful too, because I actually like that I'm not doing the full version just because I think it's kind of interesting how, even though the full version kind of gives us the bigger picture, we're using the condensed version in the case of the opening. And the lyrics end up saying, the light of the beautiful moon sinks down to the beginning, far beyond the sky and into your grieving eyes. I still reach my hand even further, believe in the grief you feel. So it's as if this bonding moment that regardless of what's come before, you know, the feelings are real, valid, fair. And into your grieving eyes, I still reach my hand even further, believe in the grief you feel. You know, I think that's really interesting. I'm trying to make sense of it. The light of the beautiful moon sinks down to the beginning, far beyond the sky, and into your grieving eyes. As if you're looking out at the moon, it falls down into the sky, into your grieving eyes. I still reach my hand even further, believe in the grief you feel. And then it continues, obviously, in actuality, everyone wants to be saved, and their wandering hearts pierce a hole in the sky. It's interesting, you know, because lyrics like this are poetic, and we can make sense of the text as it is, the sort of transliteration, the direct translation, but obviously there's prose involved and making this feel like it's trying to understand and decipher what the truth of the text actually is, which is really interesting. And I think ultimately there's the Fate Zero is all about kind of accepting, well, it's all about trauma really, but like accepting the circumstances as they are. And you know, what does everybody want in the world? Well, we all have wishes and dreams and hopes and so on and so forth. And in this particular case, the Grail can provide those things, and also is what comes with that. What sort of repercussions come with getting your wish granted? And I mean, it's just an excellent song. I much prefer that to the opening of Fate Zero. And it's a lovely track. Thanks a ton. We watch anime on Patreon. If you want to check that out for yourself, feel free to join the Discord, the Meatball Kingdom. Links in the description. Thanks a ton, and I'll see you later. Bye.